How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm so glad you came.
I'm delighted to be here.
Uh,
It's an unqualified delight.
an unqualified delight. Well, you've arrived on rather a special night.
Have I?
Yeah, my wife and I are going on a date.
Oh, date night?
It is date night.
Listen, you can't argue with a good date night.
Do you still find time to make date night?
We do, actually. I do make sure that we do spend some time together whenever I'm in the same city as Tom. I'm on tour at the moment, so it feels like I'm not there much. But
Yeah.
I turned up to the show in Adelaide, and there were flowers in the dressing room and I went. That's when I remembered it was our anniversary. And so sweet of him. They were so beautiful, and I was like, I have to fly to Sydney tomorrow or wherever we were going, Perth. And he said, I know, I figured you'd give them to someone at the theatre, but I just, it was a really beautiful card and it was lovely. So yeah, no, there's still romance definitely in our relationship.
That's lovely.
We live 10 minutes from the West End, so we go to the theatre a lot.
Oh.
So it's really nice.
We were talking upstairs about the cultural chasm that Sydney has become.
Well, I think it's incredible. It's just not 7 nights a week the way London is. Whenever I see something in Sydney, I absolutely adore it. But I always get surprised if I come here and they go, oh, well, this theatre, there's something on this month, but not this month. And this theatre not showing anything at the moment. Yeah. And I wish they'd talk and go, well, if we do something at this time, will you do something at this time? But also when you're in Sydney, you just want to be outside. Like, I absolutely get it. Like in London, we're always at the theatre because outside is grim. Yeah. So I completely understand the theatre of the harbour, the theatre of the beaches, the theatre of the park. It's just stunning all the time. There's a lot of alfresco conversation and rosé drinking here that you can't do in London. So I don't blame anybody.
But when I first moved here, there was a lot more of that sort of thing. Culturally, what you miss as a community, the cohesion that amount of art and performance brings to a community is really underestimated in value as far as what makes us tick and makes us be okay with each other. It's a lot less than people
when
think.
I lived in Sydney in the 90s, it was said that 2 in 3 in the eastern suburbs were gay, and it was such a phenomenal place of culture and coming together. But it was also a little bit like an army of people who'd moved from other parts of Australia who'd experienced severe homophobia and were like, well, we're all in the one place now, so you're going to beat us up now? And there was an energy of that to it, which I totally understood, and it was completely, absolutely valid. It created a lot of amazing culture, but I am very glad that Australia has made such strides forward against homophobia that people feel safe to be where they are now and don't have to come together and stand shoulder to shoulder, frightened and, and just not frightened, but, they don't have to be an army anymore. They can be in their own communities with their own families. Yeah. And that is an incredible thing. So there is always stuff to be lost and stuff to be gained. It would be wonderful if we could come to a place where cultural diversity flourished without, you don't need to be homogenous just to be safe. People can be safe and be themselves, and all sorts of wonderful things can flourish. But look, I will always love Sydney. Yeah. It's a gorgeous, glorious place.
Which bit of the country did you grow up in?
I grew up in Queensland.
Oh, which bit?
I was born in Brisbane, and then I moved to the Gold Coast when I was a kid. So that is, you may think Sydney is not thriving with culture at the moment the way that it has been in the past, and it might need a regeneration of even more theatre. But compared to the Gold Coast, where I grew up, we used to go to Brisbane. That was the big city, and it was, actually Brisbane's flourishing now, but it used to be the big city, and it was so exciting to get to go to Brisbane and go to the shows.
There's a moment. I grew up in Brisbane.
Did you?
I sure did. Which bit of the Goldie did you grow up in?
I grew up in Palm Beach, Currumbin, that area.
Oh, okay then. So not quite at the super loose, scary kind of Cooley Tweed stuff, but still, Currumbin.
Yeah, Currumbin's a lovely place when I was growing up. It was a very beachy, Currumbin's still lovely. But what I do feel about the Gold Coast now is when I go back, in Back to the Future 2, when Marty McFly goes back to good old 1985 and Biff Tannen's taken over the town. So it was this sort of quite sweet family place, and now it's all strip malls and strip clubs.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel when I go back to the Gold Coast. I'm like, oh, Biff Tannen took over the town.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
unrecognizable. It's a concrete jungle. There's no memories there because I don't, little suburban streets and stuff. But you go up to Broadbeach, I used to work at Pacific Fair.
Oh, wow.
As a kind of Saturday job. I can't recognize it. I can't like take anyone back and go, this is where I used to work. It's just like completely reshaped and remodeled. It's huge.
Yeah.
Everything's casinos. It's so dense and concrete now.
Queensland in the 80s and 90s, which is the kind of time you're referring to, it was a time under Bjelke Petersen. It was a very, very, very different time.
Very different time.
People don't quite get it.
No, Bjelke Petersen it was always said that he kept Queensland 20 years behind the rest of Australia.
He absolutely did.
I mean, it was when I was at school, probably some of the listeners will find this extraordinary, but it was illegal to be gay. It was illegal
Oh, it absolutely
be gay.
was.
Abortions were illegal.
Yep.
What else was illegal? Lots and lots
Three people walking down the street was a march. And
no.
Yes, 3 people walking down the street was a march, and it was completely fine for the cops to come and quite physically bust that up.
Wow.
Which they did.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, they would put cops from Roma on buses and bring them in to break up the UQ protesters. And then when the protesters would watch us going, I got punched in the nose and broke my face by a cop. And they could point at him, which one? He was already on a bus past the one, we were on the way back out again. It's a bad time. It was very different now. A lot of people don't quite get that. But I'm sure, like, when did you first kind of realize that this idea of what it is to be a woman in our community, which was shaped by that, when did you realize that might not, maybe this isn't it?
I kind of think I always felt that it's not easier to be a man. I think that's wrong. It's not easier to be a man. There's so many impositions of gender on men as well. And there are many, 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 many men around the world and here in Australia and here in Sydney that do not have access to things I do as a middle-class white woman. So that's my starting place. I think the idea that it's just gender lines, men have, women have, men are, women are, is so wrong. And I think it polarizes us and it makes men defensive. And it's anything that's an easy answer, like gender lines, it's just the world is too complicated. There's how many people now? 8 billion people.
I want something that I can see in an 8-second long TikTok that makes me feel right inside, Deborah.
And I just feel like it isn't that. There are all sorts of men, as I said, there's Indigenous men in this country. I could walk down the street with pockets full of drugs and I would never be stopped because I think white women are the least criminalized people in the world. Now, that's not to say a working class white woman who is from a really difficult, is a really lost and forgotten neighborhood and community will not be locked up in a way that I never would. I could always talk my way out of it. I won't be stopped and searched. If I did, I could cry and say, oh my God, this is someone else's coat. I didn't know I had it. I didn't know what it was. And I'd probably be let off. That's the truth, even at an airport. I mean, there are some countries that wouldn't be true for, but a lot of times I could probably go, oh, I don't know what this is, and I'd probably be let off. If it did go to court, I would have access to lawyers and, I'd have connections. Someone would do it for me pro bono if I couldn't afford it. Because being middle class isn't all about money. It's about connections. And listen, my parents weren't wealthy or, fancy when I was growing up, but books in the house and I had access to ideas. And therefore, then when you're older, you can always figure it out and get on a train going somewhere. And then it's about connections and who will fight for you. So I feel like, especially white women who have any access to connections, we can always kind of, get through on a presumption of innocence. And that is not true of black women. It's not true of brown women. Yeah. It's not even true of white men. So I just first want to acknowledge that there are all sorts of access points. And I don't really like talking about privilege anymore. I think privilege gets people's backs up. Yeah. They just go, I haven't got privileges. They just go, but I had to work for this. And privilege is a word that it puts people's guard up at exactly the moment when I want them to put it down. Mm-hmm. So I talk about access because often we don't notice what we've got access to. We only really notice the doors that are closed to us, not the ones that are open. The doors that are open look like corridors. just don't see it. We just don't see that that I'm walking down the corridor. And it might be hard. I might be having to go upstairs. I might be, oh my God, I've got to get around these obstacles. Oh God, how much further is this? That's how it feels. You know, going through your life, your career, trying to get to the next step, cost of living. You know, it feels like constantly going upstairs. Oh, now there's some broken glass. I have to get around that. I've cut myself. That's how it feels. But what I'm not noticing is that the person behind me can't get through because there's a bouncer that physically shuts the door in their face. Right. I didn't even see that door because the bouncer saw me coming miles away and opened the door for me. All I saw was steps, hard steps. Oh, now there's a tiny corridor now. I can't get through this. I'm going around a corner now. This is really hard. That's
and then when you get to the top of it, you're like, I worked my nuts off to get here.
Exactly.
Why can't you?
And you don't see that a bouncer's been closing the door for people behind you and going, well, why do you deserve to get through to the next level? Whereas my whiteness, for example, just the assumption is I'm probably entitled to be in the next room, the next part of the corridor. I know through certainly doing the Guilty Feminist podcast and, developing many more close friendships with Black and brown women, that things like being followed around a shop, being suspected as a shoplifter, or, we went into a fancy hotel. I can't remember why now, but we needed somewhere to wait and prepare something. And I think it was prepare something, and we didn't have anywhere to be. I can't remember what it was. We must have been at an event or something. And we had nowhere to go. So we just went into this fancy hotel and I just said, oh, there's a conference room in here no one's using. I won't go in here until someone asks us to leave. And nobody ever did. And like staff walked past and they looked at us and I was like, I just know that. And in fact, I think we met up with some friends who were brown women who laughed and went, oh my God, we would be followed in. And then they would be like, what are you doing in here? You shouldn't be in here. We would be asked to leave.
Wow. So
many people saw us. And this is white staff, brown staff, black staff, just looked at us and went, they must be important. They must be meant to be in there. And it's the meant to be in there. There's all sorts of reasons. Now, if I turned up to a very fancy 5-star hotel, if I want to use the loo, if I walk up, those in London especially, you get these, fancily dressed in, some kind of uniform, maybe a top hat. And they're there at the door to open the door for you as you approach.
Yeah.
Well, they're there for you and me. They go, oh, sir, thank you very much, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, come in. But then why are they there? Because we could all open the door ourselves. We could have a revolving door. They're not just there to open the door for you. They're there to keep other people out.
Are you a guest of the hotel, sir?
Exactly. Now, if I turned up with a dirty big backpack and, I looked scruffy, chances are they'd say, are you staying here, sir? Yeah. Or ma'am, or, whatever. They would probably say that. Yeah. And then I'd have to go, if I said, actually, I just want to use the loo, they'd say, oh, there's a McDonald's.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me in. Yeah. But the thing about going up to the 5-star hotel, if I'm in a scruffy clothes and a backpack, I will be questioned because they'll be like, you don't look like you're from here. But that's a costume. And I can change that costume and give myself access with a different costume. Mm-hmm. And then you learn as a white person what costume for what place will allow you in. But you know what? The color of your skin is not a costume. And so it's an exhausting constant for many people that they feel like that, you're making an assumption about me every time. And it's exhausting. Friends of mine who are black and brown, traveling first class on a train in the UK, you can go first class or you can go standard class. And if you want to work or, you just need a bit of peace and quiet, you want a slightly nicer journey, free sandwiches, you go and pay for first class. And a number of times, not just like conductors, other passengers will just go, excuse me, this is first class. Like, why would you be here? No, we don't live in a segregated country. What the fuck are you talking about? But it's a projection and an assumption. Yeah. And that same imposition can be made with womanhood in a different way. And then, of course, the intersection of black womanhood or indigenous womanhood or disability and womanhood or butchness and womanhood. There's so many different ways in which stuff will be projected upon you, and stuff's projected on men. Are you masculine enough? Are you dare you show an emotion other than anger, the only acceptable emotion for men? And that's not really an emotion. That's he doesn't suffer fools, And then there's this imposition of women and children first. The truth of the matter is, if we were both, some disaster happened and we were both in a dinghy, you'd be expected to get out.
Yeah.
Why? It's not clear. I don't know. You've got a small child. I don't. Probably best if I get out. But if I volunteer to get out, if I'm in there with an 18-year-old kid who's a man, technically, and he's got his whole life ahead of him, I'm still expected to stay in. The power structures tell us he has to get out. So I would have to say, no, I'll get out.
Yeah.
You stay in. And then everyone would think I was a hero. The assumption is that seat is mine. That's the assumption. That's the assumption of the water. Women and children first. Why? It's just a structure we've decided on for many years, that women are somehow to be protected. Children, we understand. Children, we all understand. That's the next generation. A child's going to be very frightened. A grown-up dies before a child. We get that. Why does that 18-year-old guy have to get out? Why do you have to get out before me? Why is that not a negotiation? It's hard to get out of a boat of privilege. It's hard. I hope I would do that, but if it was 3:00 in the morning and I thought there were sharks in the water, would I give up my seat of privilege? If it was assumed he should get out, I hope so. Yeah. But, I'd then want people to say, she died as she lived, of feminism. I'd want people to say that, why? Why would I want people to say that? Well, I've given something up. But have I given up something that I should have had? No, I've just given up something the world told me I was entitled to. Yeah. And it's hard for men to get out of a boat of privilege. If there's 12 men on the board of a company and no women, someone's going to have to say, look, there's only 12 board members. I'm going to give up my seat. I'm going to get out of the access seat and give access to somebody else who for some reason doesn't have it because the world decided that was the right thing generations ago, and now we're stuck with that legacy. Yeah. Would 6 men go, half our customers are women or more, 6 board members at least should be women. Which 6 of us are going to get up and go? 6 people should do that.
Fire challenge, Survivor, draw straws. I think that's. I would watch.
They're not gonna.
I would watch the fight. I would watch them draw rocks like they do on Survivor, or a fire challenge. I think.
Listen, I know you're a TV format creator, so I understand you would be able to think of. You should do a format where just you go into existing boards that have terrible gender and race imbalances, and just go, okay, this is your customer base. Mm-hmm. This board should reflect that. We've looked into it, so we're gonna do a series of Survivor-like tasks, and we find out who's left
at the AGM. That's where we're going to do it, in a sad boardroom of some suburban hotel chain.
Absolutely, in
front of everybody.
Absolutely,
that's what's going to happen.
If 20% of your customers are gay and none of your board members are, right, we're going to have to figure this out. And I listen. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that it's very difficult for individuals to stand up and say, I will leave, because that's a fairer, more representative thing to do, because other people have been wrongly kept out for generations. And I remember someone telling me she's a headhunter, and there was a big fancy department store in London, and they said something like 80 to 90% of their customer base was female, and there wasn't one woman on the board. Right. And they said to her, we don't think any women are going to want to do it. Someone's died or something. And so there's now a space. We think it should be a woman, but would any women want to do it? And she was like, what are you talking about? Of course women want to be on the board of the loveliest department store in London. Yeah. And she immediately had a million brilliant candidates. You know? And you just go, they just made an assumption, they won't be qualified, they won't want to do it.
Fantastic.
And it's, so I do think a zooming back helps everybody. Yeah. A zooming back and going, my big thing at the moment is question all assumptions.
At university with someone who works in the renewable space, and we were talking about how ideology aside, it's the price point which changes people's minds. Okay, so out in Blacktown, Western Sydney, 3 out of 5 houses have solar panels, not because they love trees, it's because it's cheaper. All right, so there's this price point that the money seems to be the thing that will get a coalition person and a non-coalition person to go, okay, that is a good idea, all right, because it's cheaper. So I wonder, diversity for me, and I've kind of been thinking about this a lot. I put this show together last year, and it was very important for me that I had diversity of ideas. And diversity of ideas meant then that I would get people from different backgrounds and different life experiences to me, because the ideas were the thing that was the most valuable. And it turned out that it was. If I had a writer's room full of dudes that looked like me, then I only get jokes that someone like me would write. Nobody looked like me on the writer's room. And it was great, because I don't want to miss jokes I don't see, but I only see the world through the lens that I have. And I wonder if you would go to these companies and go, do you have any idea how much scope for growth there is with different ideas in this room from people who have grown up in completely different backgrounds, who have way more innovation and stuff like that at their hands.
Okay, I'm gonna yes and this idea.
Oh my God, we're so improv right now.
So improv. With a surprising.
Take that, Johnston.
With a surprising twist. All right. So I was working with a very, very, very big tech company.
Mm-hmm. This is in your improv team kind of
more
corporate
I
education
do sometimes,
thing? Yes.
Corporate seminars and
mate, that's what Second City make all their money.
And it's an amazing thing though, because you learn so much about how the world works, you're trying to make places more diverse and more fair, and that kind of thing. But what we discovered is this is really interesting. I mean, actually, you should be the judge of that, but I think it's really interesting. So it was a place where they have what we call brogrammers, what they call brogrammers, and it's like bros are programming, it's Silicon Valley. Yeah. They all went to the same universities. Oh, yeah. They all hang out. They wear the same kind of jerseys. They do the same kind of sports teams. At lunchtime, they play foosball. You know those companies where it's all taco trucks and foosball inside.
And their ideology ends up in the code. It's fucking weird.
Right. Okay. Now, here's the interesting thing. They were figuring out how to go to the next level with something, and everyone was going to be a much smaller team. So everyone's working on this project, and now the next stage of the project, we're only going to have 6 special people working on it. So everyone wants to be on it. And there's 12 programmers who all wear the same stuff and watch the same sport and drink beers after work and, blah, 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 play the same video games. And there's one Indian woman who moved from India to work for this big tech giant. Mm-hmm. And she's got kids, and none of these guys have got kids, and she doesn't drink and they all drink, and so on and so on and so on. So she's the odd one out in this team. So when everyone who wants to be on this project puts their name in the hat, what do the programmers have to advertise to show why they're special and they should be in the next room? They have to advertise how they're different from the other programmers, right? Because if I'm just one of the guys, why are you going to choose me and not Todd, right? Yeah. So they're all like, but I've got the relationship. So but I wrote initial piece of code. No. So they start advertising how they are different. But what does the one Indian woman who they don't ask for drink, they don't say, would you want to come and have lunch with us? They don't say, do you want to come and play this video game? What does she start advertising in order to get into that next level? She starts advertising how she's the same, how she fits in, how she's, just one of the guys, she has to show how she's the same. They have to show how they are different in order that she doesn't get left out for social reasons, or because they go, we don't really get her, or she doesn't really hang out with us. So often, what I discovered at this company, just by observing and asking questions, was they were getting their most diverse ideas from their most homogenized staff. And their most diverse staff were trying to fit in and go, I'm just like you guys. I just thought, what? I just listen to R&B like you guys. Like I'm just like one of you. Yeah. Because otherwise I'm the different one again. I'm the one with a different accent. I'm the one with a different life experience. I'm the one with a different ability to stay out till midnight drinking. Now what happened was, it turned out that this woman had a brilliant piece of the puzzle, because in India, a lot of parts of India at that point, I don't know now, I didn't have the internet. There were all sorts of different ways that things were restricted. She had the biggest piece of the puzzle and didn't want to say it, because yet again, I'm the different one. Oh God, in India, we used to do it like this. Didn't want to give her ideas because she wanted to fit in and belong. Yeah. And so we had to work very hard to create an environment in which the staff who were most different from the dominant group felt safe to say what they knew. It is not enough to hire diversely. Yeah. You have to create an environment where people feel like they belong enough that they can be just like putting ideas out there. And I see this in writers' rooms, because I do a lot of screenwriting and television writing. Mm-hmm. Anyone who feels super safe is just like, guys, I'm just going to throw out a really crazy idea here. This is a wild idea. It's not going to work, but I'm just going to throw it out. And they're throwing out crazy ideas that would never work. Now, occasionally what happens, I love people who throw out wild ideas that'll never work. Do you know why? Certainly as somebody who is, if I'm running the show, if I'm, in charge of the room, I go, okay, I love that idea so much. And sometimes other people go, yeah, but it's implausible. I'll go, okay, how could we make it plausible?
Yeah.
What would have to change about this story so this could happen and the audience wouldn't go, that's just weird. And then we figure out, hold on, okay, it could work if. And we start altering things. And then we find, oh my God, this character is so much more interesting.
Yeah.
Because if he's the kind of guy that would do this, he's kind of a narcissist. And now we're interested.
Yeah.
So I probably shouldn't say kind of a narcissist. That's probably therapists listening. I apologize. You know what I mean, but not
self-centered.
Not clinically, not literally.
Yeah.
Or maybe, but not my place to say.
Not yet diagnosed.
Yeah, just asterisk.
Doesn't think as much of others.
Don't email in. I know what you're saying and you're right. Now, that's what's interesting to me is when people feel brave enough, safe enough, not brave enough, safe enough to throw out a wild idea and just go, this might not be useful, but it's come into my head, so I'm going to throw it on the table and not even have to caveat it with that. Just go, what if? To create an environment where we go, I mean, one thing I love doing in a corporate environment with creativity is going, okay, we're going to start with ideas that would never work. Terrible ideas. Let's get our worst ideas out. Yeah. Okay, ideas that would get us fired, ideas that we could never afford, that no client would pay for. And then we go, okay, ideas that we think the client would buy. Now, by this point, people have had so much fun shouting out wild stuff that they are loose. They are brave.
Oh, yeah.
They don't mind if the idea is stupid or doesn't work or wild, because we've created that environment. Now, here's the other thing. You go back and you look at terrible ideas, ideas that would get us fired, ideas that we couldn't afford, and you will find gems in there because it's coming from a different part of the brain.
And this is the thing that I think what you're getting at is that it all comes down to leadership. It comes down to the environment created by the leadership of the organization.
Absolutely.
And the structure. I talk about this a lot when I'm on stage. Like I went through a lot of crazy stuff. Yet because of I know that I'm a high value employee.
Yes.
And I was able to say, this is what's going on. These are the meds I'm on. This is the doctors I'm seeing. I'm a lot better now. But they were like, well, what do you need from us? And it shouldn't be that way, that it was just me as a high value employee that got that treatment. If we're asking now, we're asking people to bring their whole selves to work. We need to be prepared to support that person in their whole self at work, because when they are feeling to be their whole self, then indeed your woman that you spoke of earlier, she will come to work with this idea that she saw her 10-year-old do that day and go, fucking hell, we got to get onto this, guys.
Absolutely,
because she feels safe enough to do so. And that ultimately, that's your bottom line. That's only going to increase because you have an ideation that otherwise the bros aren't going to get for another 10 years.
I would say two things to that. One is every employee should be a high value employee. If you treat someone like they're high value, they will bring you high value.
Yeah, totally.
Two, I don't believe anyone really believes we should bring our whole self to work. That's not what they mean when they say that. They mean a bit more of your best self. Obviously, don't bring your don't bring your whole self to work. Leave the worst parts of yourself for your family, the people who love you the most. If you brought your whole self to work, you would just call someone a cunt and be fired. Like, you can't do it. There's bits of you that are not at work for a reason or not show up at work for a reason.
Yeah.
What they mean is bring a bit more of your best self. And don't hide bits of yourself, like, don't hide pieces of your identity.
Yeah.
Don't hide that you're neuroatypical, which can be incredibly valuable to a company. Don't hide your sexual orientation, which will, by necessity, inhibit you and make you feel less than you are, that will create less connection with your clients and other staff members. Those things are important to bring to work. But your whole self, I question it. I think, and I also think we have become obsessed with authenticity in the corporates all the time. But like, authenticity. Now, listen, obviously I believe we should be who we are and say what we mean, and, of course. But I do find the concept of authenticity very limiting, because if you're authentically crap at something, you're stuck with it. I think, to me, your authentic self is the biggest thing. I think the biggest thing I've ever learned. This is the most important thing I've ever learned. Your authentic self is just your habitual self. My authentic self likes to eat cake and lie down. When I was a kid, that's what I wanted to do. My sister wanted to run around the garden and play games with me, and I'd be like, I'll be reading this book. I loved reading. And she didn't really like sweet stuff. I would be like, spend my pocket money on sweets, and I just wanted to do that. My best self likes to eat fruit and do yoga. And I find if I just do the things that my best self would do for 3 to 6 months, they become my habitual self.
Yeah.
It's more authentic for me now to move than it is to be sedentary. When I'm sedentary for too long, my body demands movement. Do you know why? I've created a practice of it.
Yeah.
So it's more authentic now for me to go to yoga, jump on the Peloton, have a dance class than it is just to lie there.
Mm.
But that is because I have changed my habits. All we are is a product of what we do every day.
We really are.
And so your authentic self is your habitual self. If you feel inhibited, if you feel shy, if you feel like I could never do a presentation or a good presentation, or I'm always going to hate that part of my job, take any opportunity to just, if I ride a horse every day for a year, I'm quite scared of horses. If I ride a horse every day for a year, it'll just become what I do. So do karaoke sober. Every week for a year, it'll just become what you do. You'll never be scared of presenting again. And that's the biggest thing that I think I've ever learned.
I think what you're describing is something that I too have found incredibly powerful. It's the idea to act as if.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I would trick myself into it is just getting up and telling myself I'm the kind of person that takes a run every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't want my alarm, so I don't want to get up. So hang on, I'm the kind of person that takes a run every day. And then not long, 3-4 weeks or so, I'm going, oh, really? Why? I'm the kind of person that takes a run every day.
Yeah.
And
It's so much is your identity.
Your
identity. If you keep telling yourself I'm bad at public speaking or I'm shy or I get stage fright, you've convinced your brain of that. Now, that may be true, but the chance to get to work on yourself is the biggest chance you'll ever have in life, I think. And it's the most, you can't really change the world unless you change yourself. You have to look inwards.
It's the only thing we have control over.
Not possible. But then I do feel a responsibility to try and have an impact on the world and, leave it better than when I found it without being hubristic and going, oh, I'm changing the world. But, sometimes people feel, I'm just a drop in the ocean. What can I do? Like with feminism, with trying to make the world a better place for women. I landed in Australia and turned on the news and it was women out in the street protesting that a woman is killed by her intimate partner every 4 days in this country. Mm-hmm. And that is for the size of the population. It's also true in the UK. We have 3 times the size of the population. One woman is too many, but one in every 4 days in either of those countries is far too many. And in this country with the population of 22 million, that is a shocking number.
It's huge.
So, we have to try and do something about that. I can't be complacent about that. I can't just go, oh, well, like it, I'm not in that position where that's likely to happen. So I'm just going to crack on with watching, Married at First Sight and having a cocktail in the evening. You have to have a go at that. You have to have a go at changing that and at least try and make some kind of contribution to changing that. But unless you are prepared to work on yourself and the places where you are lying to yourself, disassociating, saying I'm going to look after myself and not looking after myself, pretending my priorities are not what they are. You know what your priorities are based on what you do. Everyone will tell you, oh, health, top priority, family, top priority. But if every morning you get up and you know that your health span would be better if you did do a downward facing dog or went for a walk or whatever it is, or you
but that first dart of the day, well, it really hits the spot.
Yeah, exactly. Then it's not a priority. It's just not. It's just not. So whatever it is that you're telling yourself is most important. If you say family is most important, but you never find time to visit your relatives who you have a close connection with or whatever, then it isn't. I'll tell you, there's executives working in this city who would say, oh, my kids are the most important thing to me, but they haven't seen their kids in 6 weeks because they have been flying around the world and they missed their kids' concert or whatever. And, then it isn't. Then it isn't. You know what's most important to you by what you put first consistently. That doesn't mean that there are times in our life when something else has to come first because it's more urgent. But overall, we know what's most important by what we do, not what we say. If you break that cycle, like when at the start of the lockdown, which went on and off for 2 years in London, we didn't know how long it was going to go for. I just went, I know myself. and it's really easy for me to become not physical.
Mm.
And I thought we were allowed to go for one walk a day. Didn't have a Peloton at that point. And I just thought, I can see this going very badly.
Yeah, right.
And I can see myself staying up later and later working, sleeping in later and later, getting depressed and becoming really unphysical and really miserable because I know I get depressed if I don't move. And I thought all the sorts of, I'd come out the other end of lockdown in a physically in a worse shape, affecting my health span, my lifespan, everything. So I booked in a 9:30 dance class via Zoom because I knew if it was like, join our dance class, I could lie in bed going, I'll go tomorrow. There's 12 people there. They don't need me. Yeah. So it had to be me and my dance teacher. I need an embarrassing deadline. Like she's just waiting there on the other end of a Zoom and I'm going to just lie in bed and just let her wait. And also I'm going to pay for the class, which I can't afford to do unless I take the class. And eventually I danced for 2 hours a day, or I did an hour dance and an hour personal training every single day. And at the beginning, the reason I did dance is I'd always wanted to learn to dance. I'd done dance a bit as a kid, but I was one of those people that at a hen night or a sketch show or something where everyone had to do a bit of simple choreography, I'd be like checking the exits going, I'll go left when everyone else goes right. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm the kind of person who can't remember choreography. And I thought that's a challenge I'll set for myself. So rather than personal training, which feels a bit like these things, I wanted to learn how to dance. And by the end of the pandemic, I shouldn't say that. This pandemic is still going on. By the end of the lockdowns, because we started to be allowed to come out, like I could go to a studio around the corner and work with a dance teacher one-on-one for a while and things like that. I could do I had proper West End choreography and I could do it and I could pick it up, relatively quickly. Because I said to them, I don't just want to dance to keep fit. I had 2 dance teachers and I said, I don't want to dance to keep fit. I want to learn how to do it properly. I want to learn how to look like a dancer, how to feel like a dancer.
Yeah.
And it was kind of amazing at the end how much I could do. And I now, because I've been on tour, I've stopped dancing. And for a while I was like, I felt like a dancer. I felt like you can say I'm not, I'm obviously, unless you've been dancing since you're a child, you're never going to be a professional dancer. But you could say I'm not a professional dancer, but you can't say I'm not a dancer because I get out of bed and dance every day. And I really want to go back to it when I go back to London because I'm like, that made me feel like a different kind of person.
What did it feel like to have, because that's something you absolutely have to do quite deliberately, particularly the kind of choreography you're speaking about. What did it feel like to discover a fluency of movement, and how did it change the relationship you had with your own body?
Oh, massively, massively. It felt like I was connecting with parts of my body and myself that I had never connected with. I feel the same about yoga. I had a yoga practice for a long time before then. And sometimes if I haven't been to yoga for a while, it feels like a date night with my own body. Like I'll go, oh, there you are, hello. Because when I was young, when I was 14, my family became Jehovah's Witnesses. And that was a really difficult time to become a Jehovah's Witness because you're just coming into your body as an adolescent and finding out different things about your body. And I just disassociated because they were like, you can't get to know your body in that way. And also there's a scripture in 1 Timothy where Paul says to Timothy, who's a young man, bodily training is beneficial for a little, but godly devotion is beneficial for all things. And that was the advice that Paul gave to Timothy, to not get involved with sport or lifting or anything like that. It was just like, don't devote yourself to that. You can do it for a little bit, but don't, so there was, you weren't allowed to really take up an exercise, and they didn't like team sports because it was competitive. So it was just check out from your body. Don't feel any sexual feelings, even on your own. Don't, unless you're married, which of course at 14, I, was not married.
Back in the day, it would have been.
No. And also, even if you like somebody in the congregation, until you're married, you shouldn't be having any sexual feelings. So you just completely disconnect yourself from you just ignore that part, you disassociate. So I have been quite disassociated from my body. There's been various things that have helped, including having a movement practice, obviously getting older and, becoming a sexual being and, getting away from that religion and becoming a sexual being. But also having experience with psychedelics, which I've only done in places where it's legal with shaman and therapists and very, very well supported. I don't recommend doing psychedelics unless it's legal, safe, and you were supported by shaman and other people.
Someone asked me about microdosing the other day, and I'm like, what, really? You want to just stand in front of a fire hose of fucking kerosene with a cigarette lighter in your hand and think it's going to be just fine unless the fucking fire department is standing by? Like, it's terrifying.
I don't know too much about microdosing, and I'm sure if you do it in a safe way with proper therapeutic support, it could be great. But I would just say don't go rogue.
Oh, no.
It's really dangerous. But with the right support, it can be absolutely extraordinary.
Because that's what it was for. That's how it showed up. And this
absolutely
is how,
extraordinary.
If you listen to Terence McKenna or read Terence McKenna, this is how great leaps of our brains apparently happened through the use of this stuff. Our ideation went to places it otherwise never would have through ingesting plants. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about the church thing. As I mentioned earlier, my wife is Fijian, Audrey, whom you met upstairs, and the JWs are all over the Pacific. They really are. And they seem to have forgotten the part about don't do physical training because they really love those, guys to go and play a lot of rugby or, go to the States and, play the NFL. So maybe
what?
the
Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah.
No.
Get out. Those boys never come on.
NFL? No. You can't do team
no
sports.
JWs in the NFL?
Well, listen, maybe there are, but from the Watchtower is team sports is not a good thing. And this is why Serena Williams being a Jehovah's Witness is always lots of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses go, what? We weren't allowed to play sport at school.
Did they ever did they ever go, Prince is a JW? Come on. Did they ever?
There's a big disconnect and again a disassociation in the organisation about there are some exceptionalised people who are celebrities, but real Jehovah's Witnesses go, they can't really be a Jehovah's Witness. And why does the Watchtower Society accept it? We don't know. I guess
because he's George Benson.
Yeah,
that's why.
I guess so.
He wrote Brisbane.
So. I guess so.
Give you the night. Okay, George.
But regular Jehovah's Witnesses are discouraged from playing any instruments at school, doing drama at school, doing sport at school. It's just, I was 14 when we started studying, so I was already involved in those things, and they didn't just like overnight pull you out.
Yeah.
But regular other Jehovah's Witness kids at school weren't allowed to do those things because it's like associating with the world. You should just be focusing on knocking on people's doors.
Did you do that? Door knocking?
Oh yeah, I was a pioneer, which means I was knocking on doors 90 hours a month. I wasn't allowed to go to university. I had to do that instead. And I was devout. I thought it was true. I believed in it.
What happened?
I woke up.
Tell me about that.
I
Unless that's the topic of the book that you were telling me you just finished.
No. But I do talk about it in there. But yeah, I woke up. If you keep going to the meetings, 5 meetings a week, as it was in those days, or 3 to 5 meetings a week, depending on how you look at it, and you keep knocking on doors and you keep plugged in, anything that has a brainwashing component, you'll keep on washing your own brain. It's exactly like I'm the kind of person. Yeah. I'm the kind of person who goes for a run. Armageddon's coming, and if I don't knock on doors, Jehovah won't be happy, and I won't survive Armageddon, and it's my responsibility to tell other people all of that. So it was only when I had a few bad experiences in courts, things like that, that I started withdrawing a bit and going to meetings, move to a different country. And then the more you're away from it, the more you wake up, the more you suddenly go, hold on a minute. Or you can. One can. I shouldn't say what everyone does. But for me, I just started going, this isn't real. This isn't true. Hold on a minute. I think I've only got one life and it's this one. And if I don't start living it soon. So I was in my 20s and I just went, oh, hold on a minute. This is made up. Armageddon's not coming. There's no paradise earth. Jehovah doesn't want me to do this. I don't even know if there is a God. But if there is, he's definitely not wanting me to walk around to the doors in the sun trying to get people to take the Watchtower magazine. This is made up. You better go and live your life. I was meant to go to the University of Queensland. I wasn't allowed to go. By that point, I was living in London, and I applied to Oxford, and I got in on my school results and I got to go to Oxford. So, I'm sure I would have had a fantastic time at the University of Queensland as well. But I've had a road less traveled by, which has, maybe I would have been more on a conveyor belt here. Maybe if I hadn't joined a religion, I would have just gone uni, get a regular job, go get married, have 2 kids, and that would have been a wonderful life too. This is not a dismissal of that life. I'm sure there would have been many wonderful things about that. But I think there are always silver linings, and my silver lining is I've lived a very strange life, and I have had a lot of exceptional experiences and joy that I would not otherwise have had. And I really believe, like I tried to have children and I couldn't. And I think, for a lot of people, that's very, very traumatic. And that is a biological driver, and it's totally understandable. So this is not a diminishment of anyone's experience. But I got to a point with fertility treatment where I went, fertility treatment can really alter your hormonal, makeup. And I found it very overwhelming. And I hit a point with it where I went, I know what the wonderful things about having children are, I think. What are the wonderful things about not having children? And my husband and I talked about it, and I said, look, what I will not do is not have children, just watch Netflix and die. But when we talk to our friends with children and they say, we'd love to come to New York with you, but the kids are in school at that point, and I'd have loved to have taken that job in LA and that writer's room, but Jenny's just found a school that she likes, and she got bullied at the last school, and she's finally happy, and we just can't pull her out of another school. It's just going to break her heart, and actually, I'm not going to take that job. So what is it that you can do without children? Also, if I'm in the arts, and I'm very lucky to work in a job that I love and be a performer and a writer and those kinds of things. Also, I'm talking from a place of massive access to jobs that other people wouldn't necessarily have. But wherever you are and whatever you love doing and whatever it is that floats your boat, whether that be, going down to the beach in the morning and kayaking, or whatever it is, whether that be meditation wherever you live, or whether that be, listening to going to see concerts, or whatever it is, whatever's the thing that gives you peace and makes you happy, or whatever ambitions you have. It could be writing a book about the shit childhood you have, whatever it is for you. What is it that you can do? What do you have access to because you don't have a child waking you in the night or keeping you in a certain town, or whatever it is? What can you do without children that you couldn't do with them? What do you have access to? Can you make more of that and find great joy in that? And once we started to write down a list of what could we do if we chose to go down this different road, we went, well, if we did that, we'd have so much joy. It'd be a different joy from children, but we'd have so much extra joy here that we wouldn't have here. Now, if we go here, we have extra joy here that we wouldn't have here. Yeah. So instead of spending 10 years putting my body through that to get a child that maybe would wake me up 4 times a night and I'd go, what have I done this for? Maybe get going right now on this track.
The true superpower that we have as humans, I think, is that we have the ability to change how we feel about things if our brains are working well. I have been through points of my life where I needed a fuck ton of meds so my brain could do that.
100%. Our brains are not
better
always,
now.
Our brains are not always on team, best priority.
No.
But, we have to reconcile that, and we have to, the thing is, when you're depressed, and I'm very lucky I have not suffered with clinical depression. I tend to get down if there are things to be down about. So that's very, very lucky. But when I was doing that hormonal treatment for IVF that I told you about, it absolutely screwed with my head. And when you have clinical depression, which is the only time in my life I think I've really suffered from clinical depression, and it turned out I went in and said, I don't think you should be trying to have a baby because I feel like this. And the medical professional went, oh, hold on, are you on the pessary as well as the nasal spray? Yes, that can cause those kind of deeply depressive symptoms. I was like, what? You could have mentioned it. No, we'll pop you off that and we'll put you on the eardrops. Oh, my God. Anyway, when you have clinical depression, you don't think, oh, God, I'm depressed. You think, the truth has been revealed to me now. All the other time that I was experiencing happiness or hope or optimism or contentment, that was a lie.
It was all fake.
It's all been revealed. Yeah. I am worthless. There is no point.
Yeah.
There's no point to anybody living, much less me, whatever it is. I don't know why I go on with this. All of that. That feels like the truth. It's a terrifying thing.
It really is. When I got real, I called my man, that guy that helps guide me through my life of sobriety, and I said, something's really wrong. This is happening. I was describing what was happening. He goes, you're really lucky, pal. But right now you need to see a doctor, like fast. What you're describing is well beyond what I can help you with. And it's the awareness that, my brain's distorting the shit out of this. But that's a really hard thing to get to for a lot of people, because why would you ever question the way that you are discerning, ocular or auditory or smell
also, we
input?
don't learn this at school.
No.
The things we learn at school sometimes, I just go, I've forgotten all the capitals of the countries and who mines iron ore. But do you know what? Do you know what I needed to learn is sometime in your life, probably, you will feel like it's no point going on, or nobody needs you, or you're a waste of time, or whatever it is. And that won't be real. That will not reflect the truth. But you will believe it will.
Yeah.
And at that point, you need to reach out for help. And I would if I was devising a curriculum for children, one of the things would be literally workshopping. And so you're going to be the person that I ring, and I'm feeling really depressed and sad and lonely, and I need your help. I would workshop that, and I'd have fake phones that they could ring on. I really do think
like when we did Swim and Survive as kids.
Yeah, but Swim and Survive in your head.
Yeah.
You know, I did a workshop the other day in our show. So you know the show that I do, the Guilty Feminist. So it's usually almost always a live show. We had somebody on who was talking about self-defense, and she's absolutely amazing. She's a famous self-defense person in New Zealand. And she was teaching us to say, if someone touches you in public on a bus, the most common response is to freeze. Is for a woman just to freeze. And now there's an evolutionary reason for that. If I fight or flee, I might not win.
Yep.
If I freeze and friend, or if I just don't move, I might survive this.
Yes.
Now, often then you're asked, well, why didn't you shout out? And you don't know the answer to that, but it's an evolutionary reason. But she said she teaches kids and grown-ups to say, she said it was a 7-year-old recently, was on a bus and said something like, shouted out really loudly, "Get your hand off my knee, you dirty old creep." And the man's really embarrassed, right? And I said, funnily enough, I have a friend in London who's very posh. And she said one day she was on the tube, and you know the tube at rush hour, you're so up against people sometimes. Everyone is touching everyone. And sometimes there are men who take advantage of that and rub up against women, and it's a thing. And sometimes women think, well, I think, if I can't accuse him of this because maybe he's just, the train, this is the swaying of the train, and we're all, I'm touching him as well. And, and they get really upset because of sexual assault, and they know they've been sexually assaulted, and they get off the train and they burst into tears, and they go and see someone, but the man's gone, and how can they prove it, and all of that. And my friend said she's quite a force to be reckoned with, and this man did this to her, and she said, I just really loudly on this rush hour tube said, "Get your fucking hand off my fucking cunt." And it's such a Fleabag moment. And the man, she said, was so embarrassed, and everybody stared at him. And she said, I really don't think he'll do it again because I embarrassed him.
Yeah.
And so we rehearsed this. I don't know how many women were there. I think it was in Wellington, and there was like 1,000 people there, mostly women. And we just all did it together. I think we said, "Get your fucking hand off my fucking knee," because we felt it was, it was often a likely thing to do, or something. Yeah. But I thought that's going to put it into us. We've rehearsed it as an army, and your brain knows this now. Your brain goes, now. And I said to them, if you have frozen before and not said anything, it is not your fault. This is not a victim blame. If you, in the future, you freeze and you don't say anything, it is not a victim blame. This is not on you to be doing this. It's not on women to be rehearsing and practicing and learning self-defense. However, it can empower, and we are entitled to take those rehearsal spaces if we want, and I wanted that. And it was fantastic because I thought, there's going to be women, this is going to happen to these women in this audience. So, not everyone, I very much hope, but some. And they will, in that moment, I think their brains may well go, I know this scenario. Yeah. I've workshopped it. And I workshopped it in the middle of an army.
Yeah.
And so I'll have that permission.
Wolfie came home the other day, and I said, "What'd you do today?" And he said they taught him, and they do the stuff at daycare now. And he puts his hand and he goes, "Stop, I don't like that."
Great.
He uses his hand like that. "Stop, I don't like that." And he's 4.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
I had no idea.
We didn't.
About that.
We didn't. No one taught us that stuff.
You mentioned school and what we're taught, what we're not taught. And we briefly mentioned Keith Johnston, who wrote a book called
Improvisation in the theatre.
There's a
genius book.
Astounding. I still remember the bookshop in Brisbane that I bought it from when I was, 16 or something. And I remember reading this paragraph because he was a teacher and broke my heart when I realized I was in the middle of one of these factories that turns rainbows into grey, which is essentially what he said. This is what our schooling does. It turns rainbows into just grey. Everything becomes like blue tack, essentially. One thing I came to that, I was in that space from about the age of 16 or so, and it gave me a huge skill set that I have used throughout my career, and I'm still, using it now, which I'm very grateful for. What was it about that book particularly, or the ideas within that spoke to you particularly?
There's a chapter called Notes on Myself where he talks about realizing that his teachers were trying to homogenize him, or looking back and just rethinking ways of learning and ways of freeing the mind. And I got this book when I was in a cult, and it was my secret second Bible. And I snuck off to improv classes, which we were not allowed to do.
Wow.
And I found ways of just releasing my mind. Now, you can't really yes and when you're in a patriarchal cult, because everything but it was absolutely the antidote. When I left the Jehovah's Witnesses, I went straight back to improv class, because the elders found out when I was doing it in Brisbane and I got banned. But when I left, the first thing I did was went to improv class. And it's the antidote to a cult, because what Keith's work does is it teaches you how to trust your obvious. And I ended up working with Keith quite a bit, and with Patty Stiles, who worked with him. And I believe Patty Stiles is the greatest teacher of Keith's principles in the world, including Keith. Like, she is such a phenomenal teacher. And she teaches you, the person. Keith was great at teaching theory and teaching a group to find something, but she will teach you. She lives in Melbourne.
Wow.
And she travels the world teaching, but anyone who lives in Melbourne can work with Patty. And she taught me trust your obvious. She came to London, and I said, right, I want to work with you every week for 2 sessions a week. And I was working as a nanny at that point. And because it was my antidote to a cult. It was yes and she'd say, trust your obvious, trust what's obvious to you. And she said, that's the only way you'll ever find your talent, is to trust your obvious. Because most of the time, your obvious is obvious to the audience. And they'll go, oh, I hoped that would happen. And very occasionally, your obvious isn't obvious to anyone else until they see it. And that's your talent. When you're watching a TV show or a movie and you go, I can't believe it. I never saw this coming. But now it has come, it feels inevitable. That's where your talent is. You cannot find your talent by trying hard to think up good ideas. When you try hard to be imaginative, you end up with something that's so wacky that no one really gets it. Or you become safe and you just recreate what you've seen before. Trying hard to be good is not your best strategy when it comes to creative work. Trusting your obvious, being patient with yourself, and trusting what's obvious to you, not worrying, oh, it's too obvious. Not worrying, I'll be boring if I better do what I've seen other people do. So I do this amazing drawing exercise that I created out of Patty's work, sometimes with corporates, where I'll say, okay, go into twos. You give them colored pencils like you had when you were a kid, or felt tips, and a paper. And we say, okay, the two of you decide what you're going to draw and draw it. And I've had hundreds of people do this. I have 500 people in an auditorium. So you're going to have 250 pictures drawn in pairs. And I collect those in and I say, okay, now I say, give it a title. And then I say, okay, now same group. Before we even talk about that, or I look at the pictures, I'm going to get you to do the exercise again, but with a different process. So the process this time is, one of you is just going to draw a line, and the other one's going to add to it. You're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to decide what you're drawing. And just be curious as to what the drawing is becoming. So you're not going to go, if you see it, like go, oh, I can make that into a cat's cap. I'm adding the ears and the whiskers, and definitely a cat. I'm controlling this. Nor are you going to go, I'll just do a dot because I don't really want to be in control. You are going to add just a significant squiggle. Both of you are going to be curious as to what this is turning into. And then maybe you think it's a face, but the other person turns upside down and sees a boat on a river. And you just allow it to become that. And then you're going to title it one letter at a time. So someone's going to do B, A, and the other one's going to do A, and you're going to be curious as to what turns it into. And you're not going to try and be clever and go Q, X, ha, ha, ha. You're going to genuinely just let your brain decide what this is called, your hand decide what movement to do. You're not going to sit there for ages going, oh, God, I don't know what the next move should be. You don't need to know. Your brain will know. Your hand will know. Just let it happen. And then we look at both sets of pictures. And generally, if I have 500 people, 250 pictures, I will get 50 to 70% of the first one, I'll say, okay, this is called The House. It's a picture of a house. And this is called Home Sweet Home. It's a picture of a house. This is a picture. It's called My Place, and it's a picture of a house. And they start to laugh as I show them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get other things as well. You get sailing boats, but I say, okay, this is a sailing boat, but could you draw in the air what kind of sailing boat it is? And they all do the traditional one. Or this is a cat. Draw the cat that it is, and I show them. Now, generally 50 to 70% houses, and then I can know the other categories. I know what they're going to be. And I say, you've not done anything wrong. I asked you to draw a picture, decide on what it was, and you've drawn it. There's nothing wrong. You've not done anything wrong. But it's just very interesting that when I ask you to, this seems like a creative act, a drawing, doesn't it? But it isn't most of the time. It's a memory act. People go, what's a safe drawing? They don't know that they're doing that, but they're going, what can't we fuck up? What won't reveal anything about us? What's correct? And on what I say, it's interesting. It's not your house. It's that house. And generally, there's smoke coming out of the chimney and a great big sun in the sky. And I don't know about you, but I rarely light my fire when there's a great big sun in the sky. So one of those is redundant. And very few people have working fireplaces anymore anyway. So this is not a picture of a house. It's a picture of a picture. So it's not a creative act. But then we look at the second lot, which they've done before we've talked about process, they just look like a totally different group of people. They've just used a different process. These pictures are so imaginative. They're big. They take up the whole page. They're swirling. They've got action. They're surprising. And the titles are surprising. The titles are Barry the Rocket Bat, and, stuff like that. And you go, and it is a rocket bat. And you've never seen a rocket bat before. And I can predict. Usually I have a slide or something where I show the prediction of the first drawings. And I cannot predict. No one person in the world could predict Barry the Rocket Bat. Or Paradise Lost, Lost for Jenny or something like that. And you just go, oh my God, Paradise Lost for Jenny is an incredible work of, the yearning of desire of where these people want to be, or, it's just so imaginative and so joyful. And they can't believe it. They can't believe they're the same group. And I get them to look and walk around the room afterwards and look at these pictures. And the first lot look like people who I'm not good at art. I can't draw. And the second lot look like, some of them look like they could be hanging in the Tate. Some of them look just like children's, genuinely imaginative children's drawings. But they all are unpredictable in the second lot. And that's what's fascinating to me. And all we've done is change process. These are not different people who've been through a 6-week program. These are people who have activated a different part of their brain. And I just love this stuff because that's what freed me from a cult. I had a little piece of it that's made me survive in a cult. I used to read that book over and over again when I was in a very, very patriarchal cult. Women made no decisions. Women were not believed. They were not listened to. And that was my outlet. And I'd make up little stories from the book, little poems and stuff, the way Keith taught me to do stuff on my own, and would find little ways of having these outlets within the organization or outside of it. And then when I left, I put myself through a self-made program, I didn't know that's what I was doing. Deprogramming that I did for myself. And now it's really everything I do is based on that. Podcasting is just starting a sentence confidently, assuming your brain will finish it.
Yeah.
That's all it ever can be. It's just, I'm on stage. I don't know what I'm going to say. I ask someone in the audience what they do, or if they have a feminist job, or, man in the front row puts his hand up and I go, do you call yourself a feminist? I'm not sure. And we start having an interaction. Everything I can do is because of Keith and Patty. Everything. Screenwriting, storytelling, helping other people come to life with, start associating with different parts of their brain and body. Everything I can do is because of that.
What I loved about that, and as you mentioned that example, it's an ability to access all manner of very confronting improv, introduction theatre exercises for people who would never stand on stage or speak out loud. It is the same bits of the brain that you're trusting will be okay with this moment. And what I also love, like you've just simply described, there is the authentic yet habitual self. There it is. It is there. And you get to ask the questions like, if the ideas came out of this bit of your brain rather than this thing, which is what we all think should happen, where's the possibility there? And that's
very much so.
It's extraordinary.
Very much so. Yeah. And also, we could ask another question: is quarter 3 profits? where you want to focus the energy of your one wild and impossibly every birth is so random. It's just like, if you'd conceived 1 second later, you might be a totally different person. So you've got one wild and precious life, as they say.
Yeah.
I don't know who that's a quote from, but somebody. And we spend so much of it in pursuit. Many people spend it in the pursuit of a totally made up concept, which is money. Money is invented, it's made up. And yet people are exploited for it. Human dignity, human possibility, probably most of the people who are the best actors in the world, the best writers in the world, the people that are most likely to be able to cure cancer are working and living in the most deeply deprived and degrading circumstances. We'll never meet them. Nobody has any empathy for them, or if they do, they can't do anything to change their lot in what could loosely be called life that they're living.
Mm-hmm.
We exploit people for a made-up concept. We exploit animals for a made-up concept. And we live our own lives as if they are somehow eternal when they're so, really so finite. In pursuit of this absolutely made-up concept, we fight wars over it. What? It's not real. It was just a thing where it was like, if I give you 2 sheep for this 1 bale of hay, okay, well, I don't have the 2 sheep here. Can I give you this IOU? That's what money is.
Yeah, it's just an agreement.
It's just an agreement. And the fact that we were trading sheep is probably absolutely shit. Poor sheep. They have their own sentience as well. But you know what I mean? It's just so fucking made up. Yeah. And yet we spend our whole life, for many people, it's just, a desperate lurch from one paycheck to the next. But when people are rich, it's a sport. Who can accrue the most? It's like a golf handicap. And I'm just like, we are fucked up. We are not a well society.
If people are listening to you and they're like, either I've been in a similar kind of religious upbringing, or they can hear I would love to be a person that can start a sentence confidently and not knowing how it's going to end it. What's the thing you could say to them about how to even just starting to explore? Because we're all born with that. What would you say to them about how you could even start to explore that in themselves?
So, improv class, actually, if it's a good one, if it's a bad one, it can actually make it worse. That's what Keith always said. Bad teachers and good teachers are not dealing in the same commodity in different levels, or different quantities. They're dealing in opposite quantities. They're dealing rather in opposite forces. But a good improv class, a good art class, Keith's book that you referred to, Impro, some of the language is a little dated, but the concepts in it are unbelievable. Patty's got a book as well. Patty Stiles has got a book about improvisation. I've got a book called The Improv Handbook that I wrote with my husband that's very popular. And you can start with those, and you don't even need to go to improv class. You can just free yourself and start doing exercises like those drawing exercises, or writing a letter 1 word at a time, or 1 letter at a time, things like that. You can play with your kids. You can open yourself up. And I would say on the money front, a very rich man once told me there are 3 things you can buy with money: security, experience, and status. Most people spend all their money on security and status. So security, and one thing can be 3 things. You can buy a house, and that's security, obviously, but also you can buy a house that, if you've got a lot of money, that's also enables experience. You can buy a house that has
got a couple of gold lines out the front. Check me out. How's my status?
Well, that's yes. Yeah, there's a hell of a lot of, I'm in Sydney at the moment, and there's a hell of a lot of houses that are also status. They're security and they're also status, but some of them are also trying to facilitate an experience. Instead of showing off to the neighbors what I've got a back garden that's got a lovely lovely pond in it where I sit and meditate. No one can see it but me, but I really, that's my thing that I have. Or I have a swing that I don't have any kids, but I love to sit and swing, or whatever it is. You can make one thing 3 things. But a lot of people spend their money on security, like banking for the future, houses and, funds, and status, a car that other people will want. Whether it's really something that's going to give me a lot of pleasure, it's just more, most people, it's true also that, for the first week you've bought yourself a, I don't know, what's a fancy sports car? I don't know.
Like say you got your Ferrari or your Lambo SUV. Right. It's just an SUV. But hedonic habituation is what you're talking about.
Week 1, it's, oh my God, I've got a Ferrari. And by week 6, it's just your car. But experience is, for human beings, studies show once you've got a certain amount of security, of course, the most valuable thing you can buy.
Yeah.
There's very little that you can go and buy that's going to mean a lot to you on your deathbed. You can buy a brand new Gucci handbag every year. I don't think you're going to be thinking about your Gucci handbag collection. They'll fall apart. You've given them away. They become last season, all of that. Experience, what did you do with the people you love to find connection, to build? And even the idea of building memories I find a bit weird. It's sort of like, bank something for the past. But it's about the connection that you're building so that as you get older, you have these serious, deep connections that you can't have when you're younger because they're not bedded in as much, that have lasted a lifetime. And part of that, of course, is the memory of the things you've done. But whenever I hear people saying I'm making memories, I'm like, you're still not in the now. You're still in Morocco buying fridge magnets so that later you can look back on this. And I'm like, we're worried about the future, or we're thinking about the past and in regret, or I wish I were there now. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is to build something now for the now, because there might not be another hour.
Oh, no.
But build something that will make if there is another hour, will make that next hour better, that next year, 10 years, 20 years. You're building something now for your next now, for being in the now for first, just being here. Being here is enough. But if you sit and scroll now, which can feel like, just gets my brain off the fact that the world is a difficult place and in many ways getting scarier and, or whatever, or it stops me having to bother, you're not building anything for the now in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
So it's the now and the building for the next now. Those are the things that I think if you have access to time and even a small amount of money where you can invest in something other than just food and shelter, those are the things.
I wouldn't want people to get turned off with the idea of like either, grabbing your book or grabbing some of the other books you've read. Because it's not like when we're talking about you need to study these things so you can go and do an improvised theatre show. No. It is...
So you can improvise with your kids in the moment, be in the moment, or be with your friends.
It's a way of using your brain that we weren't taught how to use. It is a way of using our brain that, in fact, we have always known how to use, but was literally beaten out of us through the schooling system that we went to. And how many ideas are we missing?
Oh, yeah. I've met a lot of people that can't draw, but none of them were 7. Not one 7-year-old says I can't draw. I've met a lot of people that can't act, but I have never seen 2 children who are going, okay, I'll be the bad guy and you be the policeman. Go. I don't think I'm a very good policeman. I don't know. I need to research my character.
Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah,
that's it. It's on.
I've met a lot of people who can't sing, but none of them were 4. And so, we become more and more and more inhibited.
Yeah.
And one thing I do if I do drawing exercises in the corporate world is I say, take these pictures home that you've drawn and put them on the fridge. Because when you were 7, you thought your drawings were so good they should be on the fridge. You were like, this is great, put it up. So either your drawing has got worse or your embarrassment threshold has gone up. There's only 2 explanations there. And I bet your motor skills have improved. I bet you can draw better now. I mean, better, what is better? But
I have my pen license. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there you go. There are people who will display their drawings. And you know who those people are? The people that we've exceptionalized in our society. And we've said, you're allowed to be the drawers. You're allowed to be the dancers. You're allowed to be the singers because you are best at. Do you know what cultured people have to do in the Western world? They have to watch dancing. They have to listen to singing. They have to look at paintings. They have to watch plays. If you're a cultured person in our society, you have to sit and consume or stand and look. That's what you have to do. You don't have to draw. You don't have to dance. You don't have to paint. You don't have to sing. You don't have to do anything. You just have to go. Did you see the Verdi at the Opera House this year? It was really marvelous, really, really marvelous. And I really think that young soprano's got a lot of promise. Oh, did you go down and see the Klimt? It was a really interesting exhibition, actually. And I think I think it was really interesting, actually thinking about the advancement of Klimt through his work.
Tonally, very different.
Tonally so
Very
different at the end of his career. That's what cultured people have to do.
Yes.
But if you look at more ancient civilizations, or if you look at more indigenous people and communities, generally, the way that human beings have evolved, we all used to dance and sing together. We all used to paint. And there are some societies in which if you are not an artist, you are said to be depressed. Sort of like, oh, he's not joining in. He's not painting, or he's not drawing in the sand, or he's not, dancing, or he's not doing this or that. Oh yeah, no, you don't talk about that. It's just really sad. It's sort of like, that's a thing, And so the idea that we can just look and then die, listen and then die. That's what we're trained to do. Unless, and I see this all the time again in the corporates, they do the karaoke and, it's sort of like, oh, the person who's actually quite a good singer that sang at school, did one musical before they went into the corporate world, they go and take the mic. If it's the tennis, the corporate tennis championship, the people that are actually quite good at tennis go and do that. If it's baking, so actually I'm quite good at that. And so we only want to do, as grown-ups, we've already decided what we're bad and what we're good at. We only want to have goes at things we're good at. And I see totally different with children. If I sometimes do this thing called Comedy Club for Kids, it's just basically stand-ups doing comedy that they think kids will like. And if I MC it, I always go, who'd like to do some stand-up comedy? And you know what happens? Every single child in that audience will go, yes, me.
The best.
If you ask a group of grown-ups at a stand-up club, who'd like to have a go? They'll be, oh, everyone will look at the floor. Everyone will be like, oh my God, they're going to pick on someone. They're going to make them do stand-up comedy. And because we don't, as grown-ups, and I see this if I have, I used to teach improv a lot. I don't have time anymore, but I used to see this a lot. Grown-ups only want to have goes at things we're good at. Otherwise, we want to sit back. If we think we'd be really good at this, we'll volunteer. Otherwise, we want to sit back, watch someone else do it, assess from our seats whether we'd be any good at it. If we think we would succeed, then and only then do we want to go. Children have a different metric for success. Grown-ups want to have one perfect go and then ideally don't have another go because it might have been beginner's luck. Children want to have lots of goes, and that's their metric for success. And I see it with improv. Kids will, literally had a kid say to me, I had 4 goes and Joanne had 3 goes. So it's like, well,
again.
Yeah, how many goes can I get? How many goes can I get? Yeah. They're not interested in the quality of any one go. Now, we all know our chances for success go up with more goes because we've all been to a fairground. And if it's a coconut shy where it's 4 goes for a $1, and there's one which is 1 go for $1, 4 goes for $1, because we've got more of a chance of knocking it off and winning a teddy.
It's a learning curve.
With 4 goes. And we all know that. The first go, you're wildly off because your ball's way lighter than you thought it was. It's much further away. If we're going to get it, it's probably going to be on the 4th go. Or if you go to a fairground with some of the men I've gone to, your 27th go, because you won't leave until you've got the teddy. But that is, our chances go up the more we do it. But if it's an opportunity, to get up in a, corporate workshop and have a go in front of your colleagues at trying presenting skills, oh my God, 1 go or 4 goes. Definitely only 1 and only if I have to, because I don't want to fail in front of my colleagues. If it's children, 4 goes. How many goes? Can I have 5?
Yeah.
And that's the bit we've lost, and we've got to get it back.
Because there's a thing in our brains, and certainly as I turned 50 the other day, and certainly as we get older, the word pruning, neuronal pruning, is terrifying words. Basically, your brain going, we don't use that bit anymore, gone forever. Right? It is in learning new skills and learning new things that keeps not only our brains young, but also our vitality there. I wonder if it's because the kids are actually getting a rush when they're in that learning space. If they are so young that their brains, they feel the explosion of growth in their heads when they go. We might just be so used to it. But it is in learning that there is true joy.
I think it's that we teach children the metric of good or bad, failure or success. When they're small and they just want to have a go at getting up at the comedy club and having a go at it, they've not yet learnt self-censorship. We teach them in school that wasn't a very good high jump, or this isn't a very good picture. This is, you've not done the perspective correctly. And we obviously do it in a way that doesn't help them search towards skill, but it shows them that they themselves are good or bad at art, good or bad at high jump. And then it becomes about, am I good at high jump? Not, can we as a class learn the best process to jump over a stick? And that's what I find in improv class. The way I would teach is, I learned this all from Keith and Patty by watching how they taught, really. But I consciously developed and loved doing it. There's a problem to be solved here. We're going to treat it like scientists, putting different chemicals in a Bunsen burner or a beaker. What process? How are we going to get to the best process for this kind of skill that we're learning together? So people would jump up, go, I think I've got it. And there would be this curiosity in the class. I'm going to have a go at this. Does that work? What did we learn from that? This works. This is when we got bored of the scene. Okay, has somebody else, now we know that, can someone else have a go at that and see if we can discover anything else? So the group, and I would always say to them, at the beginning, what we're looking for is a high level of failure. Otherwise, if we have a high level of success from the beginning, I'm not teaching you anything. The exercise isn't hard enough for this group. So at the beginning, we're looking for a high level of failure. At the end, we're looking for a high level of success. And if we don't have a high level of success at the end, I'm not a very good teacher of this exercise.
It's got nothing to do with you guys.
Yeah, it's not. It hasn't.
I love that.
It hasn't. If at the beginning of my class, everyone can do everything very well, I've not assessed what level we're at. So we're looking for a high level of not being very good at doing this kind of character work or transaction within a scene. High level of failure. Then we're exploring together, peeling off layers of, that works. Oh, that doesn't work. Okay, now I've got it. Okay, we're going to do this. Now we found a new thing that we need to learn. And at the end of the workshop, the whole group should be having a high level of success, because now together we've found something we can't do, and we've found new ways of being able to do it. So now we can do it very well. And that is all on me. I'm the only one that should be nervous. But I mean, I'm a better teacher if I'm not nervous, so I won't be. But no student in any class should be nervous. It's a teacher's job to find something you can't do and show you how to do it. And if you don't respond well to the way I'm showing it to you or the way I'm revealing this to you, I'm not a good teacher for you. And I used to say this, I used to teach at RADA, which is the British NIDA. This is the thing that I used to say at the beginning, is always like, if you find that you are very highly successful at everything I show you all the time, you're always good in this class, everyone always goes, oh, that was an amazing scene, I'm not a good teacher for you, because you are only able to demonstrate what you were already good at. If you continue to have a high level of failure in this class, you just can't quite get it and you never really feel satisfied by a scene and the audience don't seem very interested in your work, I'm not the right teacher for you, because I can't find something you can't do and show you how to do it, or get you to experientially find that yourself. It can only be my fault if you're always good or it's always a bit dull and frustrating. It cannot be your fault, because all you need to do is come with curiosity and engagement and willingness to have goes. That's your only job. And so we used to get everyone to shout at the beginning of the class, we suck and we love to fail, to get people into that space of I'm just gonna go up there. It really helps everyone kind of release. Stop trying so hard to be good. Just go out to have goes and be curious.
I think that right there, even though it does fit on a coffee cup, I think that's the answer to the question that I was after before. If people are listening and they're trying to find a little bit of what it is that you've got, just have goes and be curious.
Lots of goes.
And understand that failure is the only way to get there. And this whole, you mentioned before.
Failure can be fun.
Oh, fuck yeah.
It can be so fun.
Yeah.
If you don't weight it with self-esteem, if you just go, Keith said once that he went to move to the Canada because there was so much censorship in the UK. You weren't allowed to. It was illegal to improvise on stage in the 60s in the UK.
Fantastic.
Because the Lord Chamberlain couldn't censor it beforehand, and so he moved to Canada. Got a job in Canada where you could improvise on stage, and he was a professor at a university in Calgary. And he said he decided, he was still a relatively young man, decided to take up the unicycle.
Yes.
And he said he just tried and tried. I thought, I'm absolutely terrible at this. I can't do this. And then another guy there who obviously knew some circus skills said, it'll take you 20 hours to learn a unicycle before you can stay upright in any meaningful way to get okay at it. And he said, I thought, well, I can do 20 hours. Knowing it will take 20 hours rather than beating yourself up because you're not good in hour 5. That's how you take it. If I want to be good at tennis, I'm shit at tennis, absolutely. But if I want to get good at tennis, how many hours do I have to do before I can have a decent rally? That is the only question you need to ask yourself. And if you might be 20 hours, might be 100 hours, might be 1,000 hours, doesn't matter. Just going to have lots of goes and enjoy being bad. That's what Keith said to me once. I got to a really good space with my improv where our company got really good and we were having such success. And then something happened, disappointment with the TV format or something. And we hit a bad patch where I thought we were being dull and not fun. The audience weren't really enjoying it. We weren't really enjoying it. I said, Keith, can you come and watch us when he was in London? He'd tell us what's going on. And he watched and he went, it's not enough to be okay with failure. You've got to enjoy being bad. And I thought, right, next time we go up, we're going to enjoy that this is a boring show. Instantly, we were having the time of our lives. The audience were roaring with laughter. Enjoy being bad. That's a thing.
Oh, you're too good. I'm going to go and sit and watch. I'm going to watch some art. I'm going to watch a classic Arthur Miller play, which I've never seen.
Death of a Salesman. I know it's on in Sydney.
With Anthony LaPaglia, Jonathan LaPaglia's brother.
Nice.
Big Survivor fan. And you're going to go watch a big, gigantic, bombastic, super exciting blockbustery film with the cheese plate.
I am. My niece lives in Sydney and I'm on tour and I've been writing a very head-heavy book and some scripts, and this is my one day off, and I said to her, would it be cool if we went to see The Fall Guy?
Fuck yeah.
It's like a big, like falling down movie, and I'm just like, I think that's what I need.
I'm about to change your life.
Yeah.
Because the only reason I knew Fall Guy was even in Sydney, I follow probably the greatest ever cinematographic. I follow probably the greatest ever film helicopter pilot alive.
Nice.
A guy by the name of Fred North. He was here in Sydney for like 2 days.
Oh.
And follow him on Instagram and you will see some shit. So when you're watching Fall Guy, you'll be like, that's Fred.
Wow.
Like whenever you see a helicopter in a Michael Bay movie flying under the 7th Street Bridge in the LA River, that's Fred. Like, but he's doing it sideways and backwards so he can film the other 2 helicopters. Like whatever
I'd be terrified.
whatever the hero copters are doing, he's doing it kind of side because he's got to keep his wash out. Like he's fucking unbelievable.
Amazing.
It's nuts. And
Amazing.
it's going to be great. You're the best. Thank you. That was really rad.